Now, in order to do that, there's a section called the Site Templates directory. So template, Site Templates STS. I apparently have a typo too. Site template, site templates, and then there's a directory for each one of the site templates you create. Now it's important that if you'll notice that this is the STS directory, this is the STS template, those guys got to match. So make sure that when you create this directory, it matches whatever the name of the template is. So if I'll use some red ink to show here that the STS has got to match the directory name here. It's not case sensitive, but it's important they're the same, otherwise it's going to get a little dicey. Now, within this directory, there's an XML folder, and then there's just whatever ASP pages and things like that that you need to upload within the site template. I'm not going to talk too much about the other items that are contained within this directory. The one file of note, however, is the onet.xml, which is contained within that XML directory. This file is what actually defines the SharePoint site template. So the site definition is defined by that. And again, the takeaway that you should be going for after this is to just get a general understanding of what the XML components are, and then so when you're going through and reading up on this later, you'll have an idea what to look for. The project element is just the root element and sets up for the definition of the general template. Something that we haven't seen before is that within SharePoint XML you can define resource files. This is telling me that I am going to use the string in my resource file named OneNet Team website. So this allows you to take care of the different internationalization things and swap in and out different strings like that. Best practice is to use the resource files. Realistic practice is that often gets kind of pushed off till later. You can also control the default SharePoint navigation bars and what will show up in those with the nav bars element, as well as what list templates are available for the user to use. Now this is doing it the explicit way. You can explicitly say these are the list templates that are available in this that need to be included. Since the advent of 2007, this isn't used as much, and instead what's used is the feature capabilities in a given configuration. And what do I mean by that? So if you recall that a feature is a grouping of functionality that can be enabled or disabled. What site templates allow you to do is to say, I want feature 1, feature 2, and feature 3 enabled for this site. I don't need feature 4, but I also want feature 6. So what you can do is you can begin to flip these switches to toggle on the different pieces of functionality. So instead of actually manually specifying what list templates you want and then having to think, what do I need to do to put together the different functionality, you actually select the functionality itself, and then it will take care of putting in the different list templates that it requires. Okay. The next portion of this, and the important portion, is the configuration. This is where the real meat happens. Each configuration is, again, a slight variation, but overall has more or less the same feel and functionality. Each configuration has an ID, and 0, the name is the default configuration for STS. Other configurations for SDS actually could be the meeting workspace and things like that, because they're pretty similar, just a few little differences. But they all use the same grouping of files. It's just how the files are arranged and what features are enabled that's different. But it uses the same default.aspx. It uses the same files that gets uploaded. So within this configuration, we're telling it that we want to use certain lists and putting certain items within those lists. So we're saying that we want to create an instance. So we've said we have certain templates in our features, but now we actually want to create instances of lists. So what this is doing is this is creating our shared documents. Whereas another configuration might not have a shared documents, this one is actually saying I want to create an instance of a list that's named shared documents. I could also use this to create other lists like task lists, and in fact I have hidden some of those just for simplicity's sake. I can make announcements. I can make pretty much anything I want by having the different instances of lists. What else can I do with this? Within this, I can also specify that I want to have, I want to pre-populate data. So if you've played with SharePoint enough, you'll notice that when you first create a new team site, it has just a how to use my announcements, or there's nothing here, announcement. This is where that gets specified. The next item that is of interest is the modules. Modules allow you to specify different groupings of functionality. So I like a feature, but not quite. These modules you use to actually define how content gets loaded into SharePoint. So I have to make a module to specify my default.aspx. I have to specify in here any files that I want uploaded when the site is created into SharePoint. So the stuff that's on the file system won't automatically show up. If I want it to be in SharePoint, I have to specify a module to do that and tell it to be used. Again, just remember that if you're looking to say, okay, how do I get an ASPX file, or how do I get a web part definition, which we'll talk about later, into my site when I spin one up, how do I do that? Well, I use a module. And then last but not least, within this configuration, this is where we specify the different features. When we dive a little more into features, we'll see that there are features that can be scoped for the entire site collection, and there are features that can be scoped for just the entire web. Essentially, they're pretty darn close to doing the same thing, but here we're just saying that we are going to enable these different features, or even allow these features to be enabled within the given site for this configuration. Now, what you need to remember is that the different configuration enables different features, which uses different modules, so uploads different files. So then what you can do is you can begin to create these predefined configuration templates for SharePoint. Now again, don't stress out about trying to remember all this, or even really trying to understand exactly what everything does, because it will take time, it will take practice to be able to get that. What's most important is that you remember, where do I need to look to be able to do this? Now what I would recommend doing is diving into 12 Hive and start poking around in there and look at some of the different site templates that exist. So then what you can do is begin to understand, well, this element corresponds to that functionality. So as you're going through SharePoint, you can see that.